Hey, welcome to a new video. The Earth originated approximately 4.5 billion years ago. However, it's a fact that the Earth will come to its end, but the exact timing and manner of this event remains subject of scientific research. It's a frightening thought, huh? Nevertheless, throughout history, there's been many moments when humanity came dangerously close to its own destruction. Today, we'll tell you about 20 of these events. Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. Number 20. The eruption of the Toba supervolcano, which occurred approximately 75,000 years ago on the island of Sumatra in present-day Indonesia, was one of the most powerful volcanic events in history. During this event, an immense amount of volcanic ash, gases, and other materials were released into the atmosphere. According to research, it was rated at the highest level on the Volcanic Explosivity Index. The eruption likely led to the formation of a giant caldera, now known as Lake Toba, the largest volcanic lake in the world. The surrounding landscape would have been covered in a thick layer of ash, bearing vegetation and making it difficult for plants and animals to survive. The eruption is also believed to have caused a significant drop in global temperatures due to the injection of large amount of ash and aerosols into the atmosphere. This volcanic winter effect would have blocked sunlight and disrupted the global climate system, resulting in a prolonged period of reduced sunlight, lower temperatures, and altered weather patterns. Some genetic evidence suggests that the human population may have been reduced to a few thousand individuals during this event, although the exact number is still a subject of scientific debate and research. Number 19. Even if humanity didn't come to an end with the Spanish flu, many people would likely have found the apocalypse to be more merciful. The Spanish flu, also known as the 1918 influenza pandemic, was one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. It occurred during the later stages of World War I and spread worldwide, infecting an estimated one-third of the world's population. The Spanish flu had 3 distinct waves, with the second wave being the deadliest. The first wave in the spring of 1918 was relatively mild, but the second wave in the fall of the same year was exceptionally severe. Influenza often comes with severe symptoms, including high fever, extreme fatigue, and severe pneumonia. In 1918, some patients turned blue due to oxygen deprivation, earning it the nickname Blue Death. Unlike most flu viruses that primarily affect the elderly and those with weakened immune systems, one of the characteristics of the Spanish flu was unusually high mortality, especially among young, healthy adults. The estimated death toll varies from 20 to 50 million worldwide, or according to some estimates, even 100 million. Number 18. The last glacial maximum occurred approximately 26,000 to 19,000 years ago, when ice caps and glaciers were at their greatest extent during the last ice age. This was a period of significant global cooling, resulting in widespread ice coverage, lower sea levels, and profound changes in the Earth's climate and landscape. During this time, vast ice sheets covered large parts of North America, Europe, and Asia, with a significant portion of the Earth's water locked up in ice. As a result, land masses that are currently submerged, such as the Bering Land Bridge between present-day Alaska and Siberia, emerged, connecting previously isolated regions. This period was characterized by a much colder global climate. The lower temperatures were attributed to variations in Earth's orbit and the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Weather patterns also shifted, with altered precipitation patterns and the formation of extensive ice-free areas known as glacial refugia. Weather patterns also shifted, with altered precipitation patterns and the formation of extensive ice-free areas known as glacial refugia. Glaciers and ice sheets reshaped the landscape by eroding mountains and carving out valleys. Number 17. The Y2K bug, also known as the Millennium bug, was a computer-related issue that garnered significant attention and concern leading up to the year 2000. It stemmed from a limitation in early computer systems where years were represented with only 2 digits. Example, 99 for 1999. The fear was that when the calendar rolled over from December 31st, 1999 to January 1st, 2000, these symptoms would interpret the year as 1900 instead of 2000. The potential impact of the Y2K bug was widely discussed, with some individuals and organizations making dire predictions of catastrophic consequences, while others viewed it as exaggerated. Concerns centered around critical infrastructure, such as energy grids, telecommunications, transport systems, financial institutions, and various other sectors heavily reliant on computer tech. Governments, businesses, and organizations worldwide invested significant time, resources, and manpower in identifying and fixing potential Y2K issues. Extensive testing, code adjustments, and system upgrades were conducted to minimize the risk of failures. A modern doomsday scenario was averted, but how severely do you think it would have set us back in time? Years? Decades? Number 16. The Large Hadron Collider is the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. located at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN in Switzerland. Prior to its launch, there were public concerns about the safety implications of colliding particles at extremely high energies. Some feared that the experiments could create microscopic black holes, or other forms of matter that could pose risks to Earth or humanity. CERN assured the public that the energies produced were comparable to those of cosmic radiation, which has been bombarding the Earth for billions of years without catastrophic consequences. If a catastrophic failure were to affect the superconducting magnets, critical components of the collider, it could lead to uncontrolled energy release and subsequent damage within the accelerator complex. In the event of a severe malfunction, radiation could be released from the accelerator or its experimental setups. Number 15. In 2019, OK asteroid, also known as the City Killer, was a relatively large asteroid that passed close to our planet on July 25, 2019. It's estimated to have had a diameter of approximately 187 to 426 feet, or 57 to 130 meters. If the asteroid had entered Earth's atmosphere, it would have experienced intense heat and pressure due to air friction. This could have caused the asteroid to disintegrate or explode in the air. And if it had struck the ocean, it could have generated a tsunami. However, if the asteroid had exploded in the atmosphere, it could have generated a powerful shock wave or pressure wave. The pressure wave could have caused significant damage to structures and infrastructure within its range. The energy released from the asteroid's explosion would have been equivalent to multiple nuclear bombs. If the asteroid had managed to reach the Earth's surface without disintegrating in the atmosphere, it would have caused a high-velocity impact. Depending on the speed and composition of the asteroid, the impact could have created a significantly large crater. The size of the crater would have determined the extent of local destruction. Number 14. Triggered by the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, the Cuban Missile Crisis that occurred in October 1962 was a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. If either party had initiated a nuclear attack, it could have led to a devastating nuclear war with a catastrophic consequence. The warheads carried by the missiles had the potential to cause widespread destruction and loss of life. The detonation of even one nuclear warhead can release an immense amount of energy, resulting in a massive explosion, intense heat, and a lethal shockwave. The immediate effect would have inflicted significant damage to infrastructure, cities, and military installations. The casualties of a nuclear conflict would have been substantial. An initial explosion followed by radiation release would have resulted in immediate deaths and injuries. In the long term, radiation exposure can lead to an increased number of cancer cases, genetic mutations, and long-lasting health problems among survivors. A large-scale nuclear exchange would have released massive amounts of radioactive fallout into the atmosphere. The Cuban Missile Crisis had the potential to escalate into a full-scale nuclear war involving other countries. Fortunately, a peaceful resolution was reached. Number 13. The 2003 European heatwave was an extended period of exceptionally high temperatures that affected several countries in Europe during the summer of 2003. It was one of the most severe heat waves in recorded history, particularly in terms of duration and intensity. Because when it's hot, it's not just ice cream weather. The extreme heat resulted in a significant increase in the heat-related illnesses and deaths across Europe. It's estimated that tens of thousands of people were affected directly due to the heat wave. Agriculture was severely impacted, with crop failures, reduced yields, and livestock losses. Drought conditions led to water shortages, affecting hydropower generation, industrial processes, and public water supply systems. Additionally, the increased energy demand for cooling systems strained electricity grids and led to power outages in some areas. Forest fires broke out in several countries, including Portugal and Spain. These fires destroyed extensive forested areas, threatened wildlife habitats, and caused air pollution, leading to respiratory issues for nearby populations. Lakes and rivers experienced low water levels, affecting aquatic ecosystems and water quality. Heat stress on plants and reduced rainfall led to changes in vegetation patterns, and increased desertification risk in some areas. Number 12. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, also known as the medieval Great Famine, was a period of extreme food shortages and widespread famine that affected Europe, particularly Northern Europe. It was caused by a combination of factors, including unfavorable weather conditions, crop failures, and economic instability. In the early 14th century, Europe experienced a series of cold and wet summers and harsh winters, leading to poor harvests and failed crops. This resulted in a food shortage, especially grains like wheat, barley, and oats, which formed the basis of the medieval diet. The lack of crops led to skyrocketing prices and widespread hunger. The impact of the Great Famine was particularly severe in countries including England, France, Germany, and the Low Countries. Historians estimate that millions of people, both rural and urban populations, were affected by the famine. Malnutrition and starvation became widespread, leading to weakened immune systems and increased susceptibility to diseases such as dysentery, typhus, and tuberculosis. The famine also resulted in social and economic disruption. As the food shortage intensified, people resorted to extreme measures to survive, such as eating grass, tree bark, and even human flesh. Number 11. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s was a severe environmental and agricultural disaster that occurred in the central United States, particularly affecting the Great Plains region. It was characterized by a combination of drought, poor land management, and powerful winds that resulted in massive dust storms and significant ecological and economic damage. The drought made the topsoil, crucial for crop growth, loose and susceptible to erosion. When strong winds swept across the area, they lifted vast amounts of dry topsoil into the air, resulting in massive dust storms and significant ecological and economic damage. Crops failed, leading to large-scale crop losses and economic hardships for farmers and their communities. Many farmers subsequently abandoned their land. The drought preceding the Dust Bowl was one of the longest and most severe in U.S. history, lasting nearly a decade. Enormous dust storms sometimes caused black blizzards that limited visibility and created daytime darkness. That would have been quite terrifying if you lived during that time, wouldn't it? Number 10. The Soviet nuclear scare of 1983 was a critical moment during the Cold War when the Soviet Union believed it was under attack with nuclear weapons by the United States. At that time, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were at their peak. On the night of September 25th to 26th, the Soviet Union's early warning systems detected what appeared to be incoming missiles from the United States. Fortunately, there was a Soviet military officer responsible for monitoring the early warning systems. He made the decision not to retaliate and hoped it was a false alarm. If he had made a different decision, it would have triggered a large-scale nuclear war. Both superpowers would have likely used intercontinental ballistic missiles, strategic bombers, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Major cities and military installations would have been targeted, resulting in the loss of millions of lives and the destruction of vital infrastructure. The immediate effect of a nuclear war would have included the detonation of nuclear warheads, leading to massive explosions, fires, and radioactive fallout. The electromagnetic pulses generated by the nuclear explosions could disrupt power grids, communication systems, and electronic devices over large areas. Number 9. A woman named Fra Trofia stepped out onto the street one day and began to dance, setting off a mania. The dancing plague of 1518 refers to the phenomenon that occurred primarily in the 14th to 17th centuries in Europe. It involved a group of people inexplicably dancing uncontrollably for extended periods. Although the exact cause of the dancing plague remains uncertain, it's believed to have been a psychogenic disorder with social and psychological factors at play. Outbreaks were characterized by large groups of individuals, usually in towns and villages, who suddenly felt an irresistible urge to dance. People from different backgrounds and ages would join in, and the dancing would continue for days, weeks, or even months. Affected individuals often exhibited trance-like states, with some reportedly hallucinating. Many dancers would experience exhaustion, dehydration, and physical injuries such as sprains, fractures, and heart attacks. Some individuals danced until they collapsed, or even died from sheer exhaustion. Those affected by the dancing plague often faced social stigmas and were sometimes seen as possessed. Some people believe it was punishment from God, or the result of supernatural forces. Affected individuals and their families were often ostracized and shunned by the community. Number 8. The Great Shaanxi Earthquake, also known as the Huaqian Earthquake, occurred on January 23, 1556, in the Shaanxi province of China. It's widely considered one of the deadliest earthquakes in history. The earthquake is estimated to have had a magnitude of 8.0 on the Richter scale and affected an extensive area, primarily the provinces of Shaanxi, Henan, Gansu, and Hebei. However, most of the damage occurred in Shaanxi province. The Shaanxi earthquake is estimated to have resulted in deaths of approximately 830,000 to 870,000 people. The earthquake caused widespread destruction in the affected areas. Many cities, towns, and villages were leveled or severely damaged, including the city of Huaqian, which was near the epicenter. The seismic activity triggered numerous landslides and ground shifts. Experience teaches us not to breathe easy too soon after an earthquake. The Shaanxi earthquake was followed by numerous powerful aftershocks, exacerbating the destruction and hindering recovery efforts for several months. Number 7. The Carrington Event, also known as the Carrington Flare, refers to a powerful solar storm that occurred in 1859. On September 1st and 2nd of that year, a massive solar flare erupted from the sun, releasing a tremendous amount of energy in the form of coronal mass ejection. A huge cloud of charged particles was hurled into space. It reached Earth in just 17.6 hours, an unusually rapid travel time. When it interacted with Earth's magnetosphere, it caused a severe geomagnetic disturbance. This resulted in intensely bright and widespread auroras, also known as the Northern Lights or Southern Lights, depending on the hemisphere. These auroras were observed as far as the South Caribbean, and were so bright that they reportedly woke people up at night, thinking it was daylight. The geomagnetic disturbances caused powerful electric currents and telegraph wires, leading to system failures, sparks, and even fires in some cases. Telegraph operators reported receiving electrical shocks and being able to send and receive messages even after disconnecting their power sources. Number 6. The Mongol Invasion led by Genghis Khan, which occurred from 1206 to 1324, was a military campaign, which resulted in the establishment of the Mongol Empire. Under Genghis Khan's leadership, the Mongol Empire expanded rapidly through a series of military campaigns. The Mongols conquered numerous territories, including parts of China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. They gained control over regions such as Mongolia, northern China, Persia, and Russia. The Mongols were known for their highly skilled cavalry and effective military tactics. They excelled in mounted archery and employed strategies such as feint retreats, encirclements, and psychological warfare to discourage their enemies. Genghis Khan's armies were highly disciplined and organized, allowing them to conquer extensive areas with relative speed and efficiency. But what drove this? Well, Genghis Khan wanted to unite the Mongol tribes under his leadership and create a centralized empire. Also, revenge. It's believed that Genghis Khan, who referred to himself as the Scourge of God, may have been responsible for the deaths of up to 40 million people, about 10% of the world's population. Number 5. On January 25, 1995, the Norwegian Space Center, in cooperation with scientists from the United States, launched a 4-stage rocket from the Andoya rocket range. The purpose of the launch was to study the phenomenon of the Northern Lights. Shortly after the rocket launch, the appearance and trajectory of the rockets were misidentified by the Russian early warning systems. Radar operators mistakenly interpreted the rocket's trajectory as that of an intercontinental ballistic missile headed towards Russia. The incorrect interpretation of the rocket launch as a potential missile attack led to a nuclear war scare. The Russian military was put on high alert, and Russian President Boris Yeltsin, who was attending a summit in Moscow, was alerted to the alleged missile attack. After the situation was clarified and the true nature of the rocket launch as a scientific experiment was confirmed, tensions gradually eased. The Norwegian and American governments issued statements and assurances to Russia, emphasizing the peaceful nature of the rocket launch. Number 4. The mass poisoning of Point St Espert took place in August 1951 in the small town of Point St Espert in southern France. It involved a mysterious outbreak of mass hallucinations and illnesses that affected thousands of people. On August 15, 1951, residents of Point St Espert began experiencing strange symptoms, including hallucinations, delirium, and violent behavior. Some people reported terrifying visions of animals, demons, and fire. The outbreak was sudden and widespread, affecting men, women, and children, and the symptoms appeared to be concentrated among those who had consumed bread from a local bakery. Further investigations, however, found no evidence of toxins or contaminants in the bread. As the situation escalated, the French government sent medical experts to investigate the cause of the poisoning. Ultimately, a team of scientists concluded that the outbreak was likely caused by ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that affects rye grains and produces toxic substances known as ergot alkaloids. When consumed in significant quantities, these alkaloids can lead to symptoms similar to those observed in the Point St Espert incident. Number 3. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 occurred on the island in Sumbawa, in what is now Indonesia. It began on April 5, 1815, with a series of volcanic explosions that lasted for several days. The initial eruption was followed by a massive explosion on April 10th, during which an enormous amount of volcanic material was injected into the atmosphere. This is estimated to have reached a height of approximately 27 miles or 43 kilometers, and had severe local consequences. The explosions and pyroclastic flows destroyed nearby villages and resulted in tens of thousands of deaths. It also triggered tsunamis that affected coastal areas. But the most significant effect of the volcanic eruption was its global climatic consequences. The eruption released a massive amount of volcanic gases, ash, and aerosols into the atmosphere. These materials circulated around the world and led to widespread atmospheric changes. The volcanic aerosols and ash particles reflected sunlight back into space, resulting in a significant drop in global temperatures. This led to the phenomenon known as the Year Without a Summer in 1816. The effects were felt across the Northern Hemisphere, particularly in Europe, North America, and Asia. Crops failed, and there were widespread food shortages and famine. Number 2. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, occurred during the 14th century, primarily in Europe. It's believed to have originated in Central Asia and was likely spread by fleas infesting black rats. The disease rapidly spread along trade routes and reached Europe in 1347. The pandemic is estimated to have ultimately killed between 75 and 200 million people worldwide. The symptoms of the Black Death were horrific. Victims often developed painful swellings called buboes in their lymph nodes, hence the name bubonic plague. These buboes were accompanied by high fever, chills, fatigue, and severe muscle pain. The scale of mortality brought about apocalyptic conditions. Graveyards overflowed and bodies were often left unburied or hastily disposed of. Entire communities and families were decimated as the disease spread rapidly. The lack of understanding about the cause and treatment of the plague only intensified feelings of helplessness. Some people, overwhelmed by fear, sought divine intervention, while others resigned themselves to the belief that the world was coming to an end. Number 1. World War II was a global conflict that took place from 1939 to 1945. It involved the majority of the world's nations, divided into two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis powers. World War II saw the use of advanced military technology, including air bombings, tanks, submarines, and chemical weapons. This event resulted in the deaths of an estimated 70 to 85 million people, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Both civilians and military personnel suffered heavy losses, with civilians often deliberately targeted or caught in the crossfire. In addition to the loss of human lives, World War II caused widespread destruction of infrastructure, cities, and cultural heritage. Major cities were bombed, and entire regions were devastated. The war reshaped political boundaries, brought significant geopolitical changes, and led to the collapse of empires. How do you think the world will end? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.